Welcome to Great Lives. I'm Daniel. Here we honor individuals whose journeys shaped history and inspired millions. Their courage, talent, and dedication left a lasting mark across generations. Join us as we revisit their stories from film, music, sports, and culture, celebrating lives that continue to inspire and remain unforgettable through time. Ernie Anastos passed away at a hospital in Mount Kisco, New York, at the age of 82 due to pneumonia. He is remembered as a respected television journalist who became a familiar presence in New York City, homes for decades. Through his steady delivery and calm on-air presence, he built a reputation for clarity and trust while working with major stations such as WABC-TV and WCBS-TV. A career built on credibility and connection. Anastas spent years reporting and anchoring evening news, becoming a reliable figure in broadcast journalism. His style emphasized straightforward reporting and professionalism, helping viewers stay informed during major events while maintaining a sense of stability and reassurance in his delivery. A shift toward positive storytelling. Later in his career, he became known for focusing on uplifting content through his nationally syndicated radio work and podcast. He created space for stories centered on hope, kindness, and resilience, showing a different side of journalism that highlighted human positivity rather than only crisis-driven news. This approach reflected his belief that meaningful stories can also inspire and encourage audiences. Legacy of trust and optimism. Ernie Anastas is remembered not only for his long career in television news, but also for his commitment to sharing stories that uplifted people. His legacy remains rooted in trust, professionalism, and a lasting belief in the importance of optimism in media. 15 years ago this week, country music reflected on the passing of Ferlin Husky, who died at the age of 85. For many fans, his music was more than entertainment. It felt like companionship. His voice carried a gentle sincerity that allowed listeners to connect deeply with the emotions behind every lyric, creating songs that often felt personal and comforting rather than distant or performed. A voice that helped shape modern country. During the 1950s and 1960s, Husky became widely known for a series of influential recordings that helped define the emotional tone of modern country music. Songs such as Gone and Wings of a Dove showcased his ability to blend traditional country storytelling with a smoother, more expressive vocal style. This approach helped broaden the genre's reach and influence, paving the way for future artists who embraced more polished and emotionally direct performances. His delivery was marked by warmth and clarity, giving even simple lyrics a lasting emotional weight. Lasting recognition and legacy. Husky's contributions to music were formally recognized with his induction into the Country Music Hall of Fame, securing his place among the genre's most important figures. Even years after his passing, his recordings continue to resonate with listeners who appreciate the honesty and tenderness in his work. Ferlin Husky's legacy endures not only through his well-known songs, but through the emotional connection he created with audiences. A connection that continues to feel relevant and heartfelt across generations. Gwendolyn Chisom, who passed away in Atlanta at the age of 66 after a brief illness, was a pioneering voice in early hip-hop. As a co-founder of the groundbreaking group The Sequence, she helped shape the sound and identity of rap music during its formative years. Her work carried a sense of creativity and confidence that helped open doors for women in a male-dominated genre. Historic breakthrough in hip-hop. The group's 1979 track, Funk You Up, became a milestone in music history. As the first charting song by a female hip-hop group, its success marked an important shift in the visibility of women in rap, showing that their voices could lead mainstream recognition. Chisholm's contribution helped lay the foundation for future generations of female artists in hip-hop, influence on modern music, her creative impact extended far beyond her early recordings. Elements of her work have been sampled and reinterpreted by artists such as Dr. Dre, Erykah Badu, and Katy Perry. These connections highlight how her sound continues to echo through modern music and popular culture. Legacy and lasting impact. Chisholm is remembered as a quiet pioneer whose influence helped shape the early commercial success of hip-hop. Her legacy lives on in the rhythms, samples, and creative energy of today's music. Across generations, her contributions remain a foundational part of the genre's history and continued evolution. Jonathan Brandis was an American actor who rose to prominence in the early 1990s as one of Hollywood's most recognizable young talents. Born in 1976, he quickly gained attention for his natural screen presence and ability to bring emotional nuance to youthful characters, earning him a strong following during his teen acting years. His work during this period positioned him as a promising figure in film and television. Television and film roles. He became widely known for his role as young Bill Denborough in the Stephen King adaptation It's Beauty, where he portrayed a character shaped by fear and resilience. Later, he reached international audiences as Lucas Wolanchak in the science fiction series Sequest DSV, a role that made him a familiar face in many households. His performances were often noted for their emotional sensitivity and quiet intensity. Lasting memory. Jonathan Brandis passed away at the age of 27, leaving behind a brief but memorable body of work. Over time, audiences have continued to revisit his performances, remembering the warmth and sincerity that he brought to his roles. His legacy remains tied to a generation of viewers who grew up watching his work and still reflect on his contributions to early 1990s television and film. In 2009, the internet experienced a moment that felt almost impossible to explain. A short, grainy audition clip from a televised talent show spread across platforms with unusual speed, reaching over 100 million views within days. It wasn't a polished pop release or a carefully marketed debut. It was a simple moment, a woman stepping onto a stage, underestimated by almost everyone in the room, and then singing with a clarity and emotional depth that shifted the atmosphere instantly. That woman was Susan Boyle, a 47-year-old contestant on Britain's Got Talent. Before she sang a single note, the audience had already formed assumptions about her based on appearance, age, and confidence. But what followed disrupted those expectations completely. Her performance of I Dreamed a Dream from Les Miserables didn't rely on spectacle or theatrics. It relied on pure vocal expression and emotional honesty. Within seconds, skepticism in the room gave way to silence, then astonishment. The clip became more than entertainment. It turned into a cultural reference point about judgment, surprise, and the hidden depth of ordinary lives. What made it powerful wasn't just talent, but timing, the collision of a long, unseen life with a global platform that suddenly allowed it to be heard. Her story quickly became symbolic, not just of personal breakthrough, but of how easily the world overlooks people who don't fit expected categories of success. Growing up in Blackburn, Susan Boyle was born in 1961 in Blackburn, West Lothian, Scotland, the youngest of 10 children in a working-class household. Her early life was shaped by both warmth and difficulty. A complicated birth led to oxygen deprivation, later understood to have contributed to learning challenges that affected how she processed the world. In school, she often struggled socially and academically, not because of lack of ability, but because her way of understanding and responding to situations differed from many of her peers. This difference made childhood especially isolating at times. She was sometimes misunderstood by classmates and even by parts of the school system that lacked awareness of neurodiversity. Hurtful teasing and exclusion were part of her school experience. leaving emotional marks that stayed with her into adulthood. Yet within that environment, there were also protective elements. Her family life, particularly her mother, Bridget, offered stability and encouragement. Despite the difficulties, Susan was not defined by labels placed on her by others. Instead, she developed an internal world shaped by music, imagination, and resilience. Blackburn itself, small, quiet, and tightly knit, became both a limitation and a grounding force. It was a place where she was known long before she was ever recognized. That contrast between invisibility and belonging would later become central to how her life story was understood by the world. Music as a private lifeline. Long before global attention arrived, music was the one space where Susan Boyle experienced clarity and confidence. Her voice developed naturally, not through formal training or structured artistic environments, but through constant personal expression. She sang at home, in church gatherings, and at small community events where audiences were often more casual than attentive. Yet even in these modest settings, people began to notice something distinctive about her voice, an emotional purity that didn't rely on technique alone. Music gave her a form of communication that felt more reliable than conversation or social interaction, especially during years when those areas of life were challenging. It became a steady companion rather than a performance tool. Encouragement from her mother played a significant role in shaping this connection. Bridget Boyle recognized her daughter's gift early and encouraged her to share it, not as a path to fame, but as a source of confidence and joy. Over time, Susan participated in small competitions and local performances, gaining experience but not major opportunities. Despite moments of recognition, the wider music industry remained distant. Her age, appearance, and a lack of professional positioning often worked against her in a system heavily focused on image and marketability. Still, she continued singing, not with expectation of discovery, but because it remained one of the few spaces where she felt fully expressed. Loss, promise, and the decision to try by her mid-40s. Susan Boyle's life had become centered around caring responsibilities and a quiet routine in her hometown. The passing of her father in 1997, and later her mother in 2007, marked profound emotional shifts. Bridget Boyle had been her strongest supporter, and her absence left a significant emotional gap. It was during this period of transition that Susan faced a decision that would quietly reshape her future. She came across the opportunity to audition for Britain's Got Talent, a decision she initially approached with hesitation rather than confidence. The idea of stepping onto a national stage felt daunting, especially given her past experiences of being overlooked. However, she had made a promise to her mother to keep trying, to continue sharing her voice in whatever way she could. That promise became the emotional anchor behind her decision to audition. It wasn't driven by expectation of fame or success, but by a sense of personal commitment. Taking the train to Glasgow alone, she entered a process that already felt larger than herself. At that moment, she was not a viral sensation or a public figure. She was a woman carrying years of lived experience, uncertainty, and quiet determination, stepping into a space where she would soon be seen by the world in a completely new way. The audition that changed everything. When Susan Boyle walked onto the stage in Glasgow in 2009, the audience reaction was immediate and revealing. There was curiosity, but also visible doubt. She did not match the conventional expectations of a rising star in a televised competition. Even the judges seemed unsure of what to anticipate. When she announced her song choice, "I Dreamed a Dream," some in the audience reacted with amusement, not yet aware of what was about to happen. But the moment the music began, the entire atmosphere shifted. Her voice entered the space with control, depth, and emotional precision, that contrasted sharply with the initial assumptions made about her. What stood out was not only technical ability, but the way she communicated the emotional core of the song. As she progressed, the audience response transformed from skepticism to silence, and then to visible, emotional engagement. By the end of the performance, the reaction was overwhelmingly positive, with standing ovations and visible surprise from the judges. It wasn't simply a successful audition. It was a moment where perception changed in real time. The clip captured something rare in televised entertainment, a genuine reversal of expectation that felt spontaneous and unmanufactured. That performance became the foundation of everything that followed. Viral fame and sudden, global attention. Within days of airing, Susan Boyle's audition spread rapidly online, reaching audiences far beyond the original broadcast. The internet amplified the moment into something global, and her life changed almost overnight. Interviews, media requests, and public attention arrived at a pace that would have been difficult for anyone to manage, especially someone who had previously lived a private, structured life. The shift from anonymity to worldwide recognition was abrupt, and it came without the gradual adaptation that often accompanies rising fame. While much of the public response was positive and celebratory, the intensity of attention also brought pressure. Every aspect of her appearance, behavior, and personality became subject to commentary. For someone unaccustomed to such scrutiny, the experience was overwhelming at times. She finished the competition as runner-up, but her impact far exceeded the result itself. Her audition became the defining cultural moment of the season. What made this period particularly complex was the contrast between public perception and personal experience. To the world, she had become an inspirational figure overnight. To herself, she was still adjusting to a reality that had transformed faster than she could process. Understanding herself through diagnosis. Following the intense period of public attention, Susan Boyle experienced a significant period of emotional and physical strain. During this time, she received a diagnosis of Asperger's syndrome, a form of autism spectrum condition. This provided a new framework for understanding many aspects of her life that had previously been misunderstood or misinterpreted. Patterns in communication, sensory sensitivity, and social interaction began to make more sense within this context. Rather than viewing the diagnosis as limiting, she described it as clarifying. It helped reframe experiences from childhood onward, offering explanation rather than judgment. For years, she had been labeled in ways that did not accurately reflect her internal experience. The diagnosis did not change who she was, but it helped contextualize how she moved through the world. It also influenced how she approached her career going forward, particularly in managing environments that could be overwhelming. This understanding allowed for greater self-awareness and adaptation. It became an important turning point, not because it altered her talent or trajectory, but because it gave language to something she had always felt, but never fully understood. In that sense, it brought a sense of personal coherence to a life that had often been interpreted by others rather than fully understood from within. Career, music, and quiet persistence. After her initial breakthrough, Susan Boyle built a sustained music career that extended far beyond her viral moment. Her debut album achieved significant commercial success, topping charts in both the United Kingdom and the United States, and becoming one of the fastest-selling debut albums by a female artist at the time. Rather than fading after her initial exposure, she continued releasing albums, performing internationally, and developing a body of work centered on classical crossover and musical theater influences. Her approach to music remained consistent, focused on vocal expression rather than image-driven performance. Over time, she became known not for reinvention, but for continuity. While media narratives often sought dramatic arcs, her career followed a steadier path defined by repetition, discipline, and personal authenticity. Touring and public appearances brought both opportunity and challenge, particularly due to the sensory and emotional demands of large-scale performance environments. She managed these pressures by maintaining strong connections to her home life in Blackburn, where she continued to live and return between professional commitments. Rather than adopting a lifestyle centered entirely around fame, she balanced public work with private stability. This structure allowed her to continue working in music on her own terms, even as public interest evolved over time. Legacy and what her story represents. The legacy of Susan Boyle extends beyond record sales or televised moments. Her story is often understood as a reminder of how easily people can be underestimated based on appearance, age, or background. But it also reflects something deeper about visibility and human potential. Her breakthrough challenged assumptions embedded in entertainment culture about who is allowed to succeed and when. It demonstrated that talent does not always present itself in expected forms or timelines. At the same time, her journey also highlights the complexity of sudden recognition, the emotional, psychological, and personal adjustments required when a private life becomes public property. Despite global fame, she maintained strong ties to her hometown and continued to live a life that reflected her personal values rather than external expectations. Her career remains an example of sustained artistic presence rather than fleeting popularity. More importantly, her story resonates because it reflects something broadly human: the experience of being overlooked, the desire to be heard, and the moment when that finally happens. In that sense, her impact is not only musical, but cultural.